In June of 2016, a 22-year-old woman named Molly McLaren did what millions of people do every day. She opened a profile on a dating app, looking for some sort of connection. She later matched with a man named Joshua Stimpson, who lived just 9 miles away. He seemed nice and relatively normal. But this single swipe would set in motion a chain of events marked by obsession, control, and a final brutal act of violence in a busy public car park, witnessed by horrified onlookers. In June of 2016, Molly McLaren was at a point in her life where she was hoping to find a real, personal connection with someone. Like so many people in the modern world, she turned to technology to help, opening a profile with the Tinder dating app on her phone. It was there that she matched with a 24-year-old man named Joshua Stimpson. He lived only 9 miles away from her in Kent, a county in southeast England. For the next several months, their relationship existed primarily within the digital confines of the app. They chatted regularly, building a rapport, but didn't take the step to meet in person until November of that year. Before that first date, Molly confided in her mother, Joanne, expressing that she was feeling nervous about finally meeting Josh face-to-face. It's a feeling so many can relate to, that mix of excitement and anxiety before a blind date. Thankfully, from Molly's perspective, the meeting went well. He seemed nice, and the initial encounter was positive enough to warrant seeing each other again. Molly was a vibrant and busy young woman with a full life. She was a great student, deeply invested in her studies, in her second year at the University of Kent, where she was pursuing a degree in health and fitness. She was also a motivational fitness blogger, using her online platform to inspire others with workout tips and positive messages. She had built a strong, supportive circle of friends, and they would often meet up to hang out or work out together. Her close friend, Amy Lee, described her sense of humor, stating that Molly was a real joker, the kind of person who could genuinely make you laugh, even when you were having a bad day. Molly's roots were in a rural village in Kent, where she grew up with her parents, Joanne and Doug McLaren. They were a very close, loving family. Her mother's description of her was beautifully simple and heartfelt. Her father, Doug, echoed this deep affection, his words carrying the pure love of a parent. However, behind this shining exterior of confidence and motivation, Molly, like many people, faced her own private struggles. She had dealt with bulimia and anxiety for many years. This was a part of her life she had to manage, and it gave her a sense of empathy for others who were fighting their own internal battles. This empathy would later become a significant factor in her relationship with Josh. Meanwhile, Josh was working, having held a job in a warehouse before transitioning into a sales role. His family background was different from Molly's. He came from divorced parents and was mainly raised by his father. As they started dating, their shared interest in fitness and exercise became a common bond. They spent more and more time together, and for Molly, this was her first serious romantic relationship. Her family, wanting to be supportive and welcoming, invited Josh into their home. On their first meeting, they found him to be well-mannered, nice-looking, and generally chatty and normal. Josh's own family liked Molly and felt that she was a positive and a good influence on their son. As Molly's relationship with Josh continued beyond those initial months, he began to reveal more about his personal life, confiding in her that he suffered from bipolar disorder. This disclosure naturally worried Molly, who understood the complexities of mental health struggles through her own experiences. However, in her day-to-day interactions with Josh, she hadn't observed any dramatic mood swings or behavior that caused immediate concern. This shared understanding of personal challenges seemed to create a bond between them. Molly herself had navigated the difficult waters of bulimia and anxiety for years, and they appeared to become a source of mutual support, each understanding what it meant to fight internal battles. Molly's mother, Joanne, however, felt a tremor of apprehension upon learning about Josh's bipolar history. As a mother, She worried about her daughter taking on the weight of someone else's struggles when she was still managing her own. Joanne perceptively noted that while Molly projected an image of shining self-confidence to the world, on the inside she often grappled with anxiety and a lack of self-belief, frequently worrying that she wasn't good enough and underestimating her own worth. This internal vulnerability, Joanne feared, could make her daughter more susceptible to the dynamics of a challenging relationship. Molly, wanting to be fair and non-judgmental, asked her mother not to prejudge Josh based on his diagnosis. Around this same time, Molly's friends began to notice subtle shifts in the relationship's atmosphere. As weeks turned into months, Josh's behavior became increasingly possessive and controlling. If Molly had a day dedicated to studying for her university courses, Josh would employ manipulative tactics to guilt her into spending more time with him instead, or he would simply show up unannounced wherever she was, undermining her plans and her independence. Her circle of friends began to feel a distinct cooling. They felt he was deliberately trying to isolate Molly from them, to become her sole focus and primary source of validation. Another point of curiosity for her friends was Josh's own social life. They found it strange and telling that he showed no interest whatsoever in introducing Molly to any of his own friends. It created a one-sided dynamic where Molly was integrating him into her world, while his world remained a closed book, further deepening his dependence on her and limiting her social interactions to those he could monitor and control. This emerging pattern of control was subtle at first, masked by the guise of intense romantic interest, but for those who knew Molly best, the signs were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The vibrant, independent woman they knew was slowly being worn down by the constant demands and psychological manipulations of a partner who seemed to want to eclipse her entire world. The pressure on Molly began to mount significantly as she juggled the demands of her university studies with the increasing weight of her relationship. Her father, Doug, noticed a troubling pattern. Josh would frequently turn up at their family home uninvited, specifically during times when Molly had set aside hours for focused studying. He wouldn't necessarily interrupt her work directly, but would instead lie on her bed, a silent, persistent presence as she tried to concentrate. To Doug, it seemed less about spending quality time together and more about Josh's need to always know exactly where she was and what she was doing, a form of passive surveillance that eroded her personal space and academic focus. This behavior escalated when Josh made the significant decision to quit his warehouse job, explicitly stating that he wanted to maximize the time he could spend with Molly during her summer break from university. Instead of being flattered, Molly felt increasingly suffocated. The relationship was becoming all-consuming, leaving little room for her own identity, friends, or ambitions. Yet, in a testament to her fundamentally caring and supportive nature, even as she felt overwhelmed, Molly actively helped Josh search for and secure a new job because she genuinely wanted him to be happy and stable. A much more public and alarming display of his controlling behavior occurred during a family weekend away to celebrate her aunt's 60th birthday. Josh attended the event, and from the moment they arrived, his conduct drew attention from multiple family members. He positioned himself as Molly's shadow, refusing to leave her side for even a moment throughout the party. Her father, Doug, observed that Josh's demeanor grew visibly resentful and dark with jealousy when Molly was on the dance floor, laughing and enjoying herself with her male cousins. The tension was palpable enough that one of these cousins, who was meeting Josh for the very first time that evening, felt compelled to pull another family member aside and comment, with intuitive unease, saying, "I don't know what it is, but I don't like him." The situation came to a head later that night back at the hotel. Molly's mother, Joanne, was in her own room while her husband slept when she received a frantic text message from Molly pleading for her to come to their room immediately, stating that Josh was acting up. When Joanne entered the room, Josh aggressively advanced toward her, thrusting his mobile phone into her hands and demanding that Johann looks at what he has got in his phone. Ignoring his agitated state, Joanne focused on her daughter, asking her what was wrong. A shaken Molly explained that Josh was being incredibly strange. He was deliberately trying to provoke and upset her, and then coldly recording her reactions on his phone. For Joanne, This was no longer a vague worry about compatibility or her daughter being a little stressed. This was a concrete, frightening incident. The image of Josh trying to document Molly's distress was a chilling confirmation that things were not just quite right. This public unraveling at a family celebration marked a point of no return for Molly's perception of the relationship. The private anxieties and the concerns of her friends and family were now validated by his own actions in front of everyone. The cumulative weight of Josh's behavior finally pushed Molly to a breaking point. Her friends watched with concern as the vibrant, bubbly woman they knew seemed deflated and worn down, a shadow of her usual energetic self. Recognizing that she was deeply unhappy, Molly went to her mother and confided that her feelings for Josh had changed completely. She simply didn't feel the same way about him anymore. Despite this resolve, she was gripped by a palpable fear of his reaction to a breakup. Gathering her courage, she initially tried to end the relationship via text message, a method she likely hoped would create a buffer between them. Josh's response was immediate and vicious, a string of abusive messages and wild accusations. This was swiftly followed by a relentless bombardment of texts, this time pleading with her, wearing down her resolve with promises to change and declarations of his need for her. Molly's friends, who had witnessed the negative impact of the relationship firsthand, advised her strongly not to take him back. They could see the danger signs clearly. But Molly, riddled with a guilt that Josh expertly manipulated, and perhaps still holding on to a sliver of hope for the man she first met, made the fateful decision to give him another chance. In a last-ditch effort to salvage things, the couple went on a make-or-break holiday to Tenerife in May of 2017. The vacation was a disaster. Even in a tropical paradise, Josh's need for control dominated the trip. Molly felt trapped, sending a desperate text to a friend that read, "It's the worst thing ever. Help me. Can't talk about it until I get home, but I'm dreading it." Upon their return, Molly found the strength to end it for good. The final breakup happened on June 17, 2017, while she was out with friends celebrating her upcoming 23rd birthday. During an argument, Molly finally snapped, telling Josh publicly and definitively that she did not want to be with him anymore. Onlookers watched as he became instantly aggressive, yelling out to the room with a performance of his own victimhood. In the days that followed, her friends noticed an immediate and profound change in Molly. The weight that had burdened her for months was lifted. Her bubbly spirit resurfaced. She felt some guilt about having broken up with him in a public place, but overall, she was immensely relieved to have it all behind her. However, Josh's reaction to the finality of the breakup was not one of acceptance, but of rapid and public escalation. He took to Facebook, weaponizing the platform to launch a campaign of abuse against her. He posted malicious lies, falsely accusing Molly of being addicted to cocaine and sleeping around. In a calculated move to maximize her humiliation and fear, he deliberately tagged her family members and close friends in these posts, ensuring her entire support network would see his venomous claims. He coupled this public shaming with a direct threat, sending her a message that ominously promised there was more to come. The situation had shifted from a difficult breakup to a clear and present danger, and Molly McLaren was now living in fear of a man who refused to let her go. The harassment escalated from online vitriol to a tangible, terrifying reality, forcing Molly to take official action. On June 22, 2017, accompanied by her mother for support, she went to the North Kent police station to formally report Josh's relentless campaign of stalking and intimidation. During the visit, in a move likely intended to demonstrate they were taking the matter seriously, the police officers placed a call to Josh on speakerphone, with Molly and Joan sitting right there in the room, listening. The officers' words were a clear, official warning. "We're not going to have to talk about this again, are we?" Josh's reply was a chilling, defiant challenge, saying, "Aren't we?" Molly later told her friends that his voice during that call was utterly cold, devoid of any emotion or remorse. The official advice given to Molly and all of her friends was standard procedure: to block Josh on every form of social media and to strictly avoid any and all communication with him. It was a defensive strategy, but it was tragically insufficient against a determined stalker. Unknown to Molly and the authorities, Josh was already several steps ahead, actively circumventing these digital barriers. While Molly was trying to follow the rules, Josh was engaged in a methodical and sinister preparation. The very next day, on June 27th, he left work early. CCTV cameras captured him at an Asda supermarket, where he carefully selected and purchased a sabatier paring knife, a small, sharp, and lethal weapon. Later that same day, he was recorded again, this time at a home-based store, where he bought a pickaxe. Both of these items were stowed in his car. He was now armed and preparing for a violent confrontation. On June 28th, Molly was out for dinner and drinks with her friends, having posted about her plans on Snapchat. In a move that felt both coincidental and intensely intimidating, Josh walked into the very same pub, deliberately bringing another young woman with him as a prop. He walked directly past their table and spent the next few hours stationed in the smoking area, his gaze fixed on Molly and her friends from outside the window, a constant, looming presence that put the entire group on edge. When he finally left the establishment, he made a point of walking past their table once more, despite there being other, closer exits available. Molly left shortly after, and her friends, while concerned, told her not to worry about that psycho. The morning of June 29, 2017, began with a sense of normalcy for Molly McLaren. She woke up and headed to the Pure Gym near her house, planning to film some exercise routines for her university course. It was a Thursday, a day for focusing on her studies and her passion for fitness. She entered the gym at 10:10 a.m. She made her way to an upstairs workout room, a space that happened to be empty at the time, offering her the privacy she needed to record her material. Just a few minutes later, the gym's closed-circuit television system captured a figure coming up the staircase that led directly to that same room. It was Joshua Stimpson. He walked to the doorway and paused, peering into the room through the propped-open door, observing Molly inside. He then retreated, going about 3/4 of the way back down the stairs, only to stop, turn around, and ascend once more. This time, he entered the room. He grabbed a workout mat and deliberately placed it right next to Molly before sitting down. He then shifted the mat even closer and began a perfunctory set of abdominal exercises. Molly, gathering her courage, got up and walked over to him. She looked directly at him, grabbed her drink, and asked him if he was following her. He refused to reply. She then asked him why he wasn't at work, to which he coldly retorted, "It's none of your business." Josh then ended his brief workout, left the room, and headed downstairs. But he wasn't done. He came back up the stairs one more time, peering into the workout room again before finally leaving the gym. Molly, following her mother's earlier advice, waited in the gym until she was sure he was gone. She then headed to the locker room and called her mom, telling her that Josh had shown up. Joanne told her to come straight home. Unknown to her, Josh was not gone. He was waiting in the Dockside Outlet car park. As Molly reached her black Fiat 500 just after 11 a.m., she got in and closed the door, likely believing the immediate danger had passed. At 11:08 a.m., Josh yanked the car door open and launched his brutal attack. He stabbed her 75 times with a paring knife he had purchased 2 days prior. A man walking his dog witnessed the horrific scene. He saw Molly's hands up, trying in vain to defend herself, and saw the small knife in Josh's hand. He passed his dog's leash to another person and ran toward the car in an effort to help. He tried to pull Josh away but could not get a firm grip because of all the blood splatter. He later stated that he stepped back, knowing with horrible certainty that Molly could not survive such a ferocious attack and also feeling helpless to stop it. Paramedics and police arrived at the scene, but their efforts were in vain. At 11:43 a.m., Molly McLaren was pronounced dead in her car. Her cause of death was multiple stab and slash wounds to her neck. When police arrived, Josh stood calmly nearby, his white tank top saturated with Molly's blood, and simply stated, "She's in the car. I've killed her." In the immediate aftermath of the murder, the ripple effects of the tragedy began to spread instantly. Molly's friend Amy, who had been in text contact with her just minutes before the attack, received messages from co-workers asking if she had heard about the horrific incident at the Dockside Shopping Center. Initially, Amy thought it was just a terrible, unrelated event, but when she tried repeatedly to call and text Molly with no response, a cold dread began to set in. Molly's mother, Joanne, also received a link to the news of the incident, and with a mother's intuition, she immediately knew it was her daughter. This devastating fear was soon confirmed by a formal visit from the police. Meanwhile, Molly's father, Doug, was working on a ship 100 miles off the coast when he received an urgent email from his wife telling him to call immediately. He had to receive the catastrophic news that his daughter had been murdered over the phone, a moment that undoubtedly shattered his world. As Josh Stimson was processed by the legal system, he initially answered no comment to every question posed by the police. The murder weapon was quickly recovered from Molly's car, creating an undeniable physical link to his crime. However, the true scope of his character and the calculated nature of his actions would only be fully revealed during his trial, which began on January 23, 2018. To the profound disbelief and added grief of Molly's family, Josh pleaded not guilty to murder, instead entering a plea of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. This plea forced Molly's grieving family and friends to endure a detailed and public trial, where the most intimate and horrific details of her final moments were laid bare. It was during this trial that the full picture of Joshua Stimson emerged, and it was far more damning than anyone had anticipated. Two women he had previously dated came forward to testify, revealing a clear and disturbing pattern of behavior that long preceded Molly. One former girlfriend testified that in 2013, he had threatened to fly to where she was on holiday and drown her. She had reported this threat to the Staffordshire police, but it was never officially recorded as a crime, a critical failure that would later prompt the department to change its policies on stalking reports. This same woman also testified that he had slashed her car tires outside her home. Another former girlfriend described his obsessive and controlling nature, recounting how he had called her 25 times in a single day and had once turned up at her house at 2 a.m. after a breakup, claiming he needed to charge his phone. Finally, and crucially, the trial revealed that Josh's claimed diagnosis of bipolar disorder, a fact he had used to garner Molly's sympathy and justify his behavior, was a complete fabrication. The trial was not just about establishing guilt for a single act, but about unmasking a lifelong pattern of manipulation, control, and violence against women. The trial of Joshua Stimson reached its conclusion on February 6, 2018. After 2 weeks of hearing the harrowing evidence, the jury retired to deliberate. They took less than 4 hours to reach a unanimous verdict, a relatively short period that reflected the overwhelming weight of the evidence against him. Joshua Stimson was found guilty of the murder of Molly McLaren. The key factor that elevated the crime from manslaughter to murder was the clear evidence of stalking, control, and premeditation. Stimson was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 26 years before he would ever be considered for parole. For Molly's parents, the verdict brought a measure of legal closure, but it did little to fill the void left by their daughter's absence. Joanne expressed the enduring pain of their loss, stating that it was hard to find joy in anything anymore now that half her heart and her baby girl were gone. Yet, in the face of unimaginable grief, they and Molly's friends were determined to ensure that her legacy would not be defined solely by her murder. On July 10, 2018, the University of Kent held its graduation ceremony. Molly's parents attended as guests of honor. In a deeply emotional moment that united the packed cathedral in a shared sense of loss and respect, Joanne and Doug walked onto the stage to accept their daughter's posthumously awarded degree in health and fitness. They were met with a sustained and heartfelt standing ovation, a powerful tribute to the vibrant life that had been cut short. This act of remembrance was coupled with a drive to create something positive from the tragedy. Molly's family and friends established the Molly McLaren Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping those suffering from eating disorders, a cause close to Molly's heart given her own long-standing battle with bulimia. The foundation serves as a living testament to her caring nature and her desire to help others, turning profound grief into a source of support and hope for people facing similar struggles. Beyond this personal legacy, Molly's case had a significant impact on a national level. Her story, along with other high-profile stalking cases, highlighted critical failings in how stalking reports were handled by authorities. In March of 2019, the Stalking Protection Act was passed by the UK Parliament. This new law provided police with stronger, more proactive powers to intervene early in stalking cases, including the ability to impose stalking protection orders on suspects before a full prosecution, offering greater and more immediate protection to potential victims. Molly McLaren's name is now intrinsically linked to this important legal change. Her story stands as a permanent, tragic reminder of the lethal potential of stalking and coercive control, urging individuals to recognize the warning signs in relationships and to report threats to the police persistently. It also serves as a solemn acknowledgement of the enduring need for vigilance, both personally and within our legal systems, to prevent such a tragedy from happening to others. I thank you all for being here. Do well to like if you enjoyed this deep dive. I will be seeing you on our next episode. Goodbye.